What's up, Taiwan? I'm Rik Glauert with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. An active duty US Major General may have been present at a meeting ahead of Taiwan's biggest annual military exercises. In a report on the Huang talks, Taiwan's military media posted a photo of Taiwan's defense minister sitting next to what appears to be the name tag of Major General J.M. Bergeron, a senior member of the US Indo-Pacific Command. The photo has since been removed. It's unusual for an active duty US officer to participate in the Huang military exercises, despite the US being a major provider of weapons and training to Taiwan. The US Indo-Pacific Command has not responded to a request for comment. Taiwan's defense ministry says it monitored a Chinese satellite passing over the country's airspace on Saturday night. The satellite, launched from China's Sichuan province, passed over central Taiwan and headed towards the Western Pacific. The defense ministry says it was no threat to Taiwan. China has launched at least a dozen satellites passing over Taiwan or its defensive buffer zone in the last 2 years. One satellite, launched just days before the country's 2024 presidential election, triggered an island-wide air raid alert, with Taiwan's foreign ministry calling it grey zone activity. US President Donald Trump says he is confident he can reach a deal on Ukraine's mineral wealth. It comes after a week of bitter words between Trump and his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukrainians are now facing an uncertain future as the third anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion nears. Wounded Ukrainian soldiers at a military hospital in the country's east. Battered but safe from Russia's bullets for now at least, and with time to consider their country's fate. As global leaders weigh in on potential peace here, on this part of the front line, it is becoming harder for soldiers to fend off Russia's advances.
Ну вот пока вот эта вся движуха происходит, они как максимум хотят захватить побольше. Лезут. Ну мы стараемся, как бы отбиваем их, как можем. Ну просто сами понимаете, у них все в 10 раз больше.
As Russian President Vladimir Putin's full-scale invasion of his neighbour enters its fourth year, Ukraine faces a precarious future. The US, Ukraine's largest backer for the last 3 years, is faltering, with President Donald Trump promising to end the war through a deal with Putin and telling Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky he should give up his country's rare earth minerals as payments for the billions the US has given in aid and weapons.
We don't get our money back. We get nothing. So we're getting our money back. We're going to get our money back because it's not fair. It's just not fair. And we will see. But I think we're pretty close to a deal, and we better be close to a deal.
Zelensky had previously refused to sign a deal on this, though now may be softening. But Trump dealing directly with Putin has already caused a massive gulf between the US and European leaders, as the biggest conflict to hit their continent in decades enters a dangerous new phase. In a visit to the White House this week, French President Emmanuel Macron will be hoping to secure Europe a seat at the negotiating table.
President Macron clearly believes that he can have some kind of impact on the decision-making process in the United States in a moment of crisis, transatlantic crisis. And I think Macron believes that he has a historic role to play. Whether he can actually achieve something, however, in this visit is an entirely different matter.
Europe is waking up to shouldering a greater burden of pursuing peace. Many people in European capitals showing support for Ukraine and its fight. In Ukraine's capital Kyiv, another Russian drone strike left one dead overnight. People here have no choice but to face up to repelling their aggressor, knowing that much of their fate lies in powers beyond their control. James Lin and Rik Glauert for TaiwanPlus. Germany is heading to the polls to elect a new parliament. The elections follow the collapse of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's coalition government last year, but now come at a time of instability, as the continent reels from a United States that is reducing its support for Ukraine. Louise Watt reports.
Ahead of Germany's elections, tens of thousands rally in central Berlin against the far right, which has been boosted recently by deadly attacks blamed on asylum seekers. Led by Alice Weidel, the Alternative for Germany party is not expected to win or form part of a coalition government. But it has pushed the issue of immigration up the agenda. Even the man expected to become Germany's next leader is talking about it.
Wir müssen in den nächsten 4 Jahren 2 große Probleme dieses Landes lösen. Das ist die Migration und das ist die Wirtschaft.
Germany is 2 years into recession, hit by high energy prices in the wake of Russia's war in Ukraine and Chinese competition. Friedrich Merz is seen as pro-business and is running under the slogan, "A Germany we can be proud of again." His conservative Christian Democrats are expected to become the biggest party in the German parliament. The previous coalition government, led by Chancellor Olaf Scholz, collapsed in November. They disagreed over the budget and how to get the country's economy going again. Scholz is running in this election, but his Social Democrats, or SPD, are trailing in the polls, well behind Merz's CDU-CSU bloc and the far-right Alternative for Germany. The current government is made up of the SPD, Greens and the Free Democratic Party, or FDP. Wanting to reduce trade dependency on China, they toughened Germany's approach to Beijing during their 3 years in power. Theirs was also the first German government to mention Taiwan in its coalition agreement, to emphasize their commitment to global democratic values, illustrating their awareness of the East Asian country's geopolitical significance. This led to the first visit by a German minister to Taiwan in 26 years. A visit called vile by China, which claims sovereignty over Taiwan. But observers say the coalition parties disagreed on how to treat Beijing, with Chancellor Scholz wary of upsetting China, which up until last year was Germany's largest trading partner. Now, election frontrunner Merz is expected to take a tougher line.
He has named Beijing as one of the members of the 4-party axis of authoritarianism, together with Russia, North Korea, and Iran. And there are clear indications that Merz would push for a more assertive policy that Berlin should assume vis-à-vis Beijing. That being said, he would have to make sure that the different members of the coalition would be able to reconcile their differences to the greatest extent possible.
Those differences may arise with Merz's sister party, the Christian Social Union, or CSU. It's based out of the state of Bavaria, which has strong links to China, a big investor in its car industry. But beyond trade and manufacturing, there are bigger concerns at play in these elections. The vote comes as Europe reels from reduced US support for the continent's security and a clear shift in policies by its historical ally. Whichever parties form Germany's next government, they face the challenge of not just turning around Europe's biggest economy and addressing voters' fears on immigration, but also charting a path forward for Europe at a time of greater global uncertainty. Huang and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwanese companies are making big moves abroad, investing more money overseas than ever before. That's according to new central bank statistics for 2024. The increase is largely due to Taiwan chip giant TSMC's efforts to expand into the US and Japan, including its first fabrication plant in Japan, as well as efforts by other companies in the chip-making industry. Taiwan-born CEO Jensen Huang has been at the forefront of the global AI revolution. His California-based tech firm, NVIDIA, has risen to become one of the most valuable companies in the world, built on technologies that have changed computing and its applications. But who is he, and how did he find success in Silicon Valley? To find out, our tech reporter Joyce Zeng sat down with Stephen Witt, the author of an upcoming biography on Huang.
Jensen Huang has been written about by so many people and in so many ways, from his tech vision to his management style. What did you set out to do with this book?
Yeah, well, I really wanted to write the inside story of Jensen, the story that had never been told about who he is, where he came from, his background, his way of thinking about things, and his approach and his methodology, but also things like his personal life, what it's like inside his house, who his friends are, how his family thinks of him. And I was granted 6 interviews with Jensen, which is unprecedented. No journalist has interviewed him as many times as I have at this point. And so I really got to sort of intimate sense of both his history, his background, his life, and his biography. And rather than ask him questions that every other journalist had asked him, I looked for places where I could fill in the gaps and ask him questions that nobody had asked him before. So one thing I knew, once, a long time ago, he'd mentioned that he'd almost died in a car crash. He'd rolled a car when he was about 21 years old, and he'd never told that story. So that was actually the first question I asked him, was about the time he rolled the car. And he kind of, sat like this and was surprised that anyone knew about it.
You talk about getting an inside look into Jensen Huang. Who were some of the other people that you talked to, and say who was the most memorable one?
And then the other one that I thought was really fascinating was this guy, Ben Bays. And Ben was actually Jensen's childhood friend. He was the first friend he made upon moving to the United States at the age of 10. And he was the only Asian person in the entire school, so there was quite a lot of racism, a lot of bullying. And to hear how Jensen kind of dealt with that bullying and kind of overcame it and even became a leader at the school left Ben Bays, his friend at the time, completely in awe. And I went back to Bays 40 years later, and I'm like, are you surprised that Jensen has become, this kind of like world-conquering billionaire? And Bays said, no, I'm not surprised at all. So it's amazing to me to see that even like a 10-year-old boy, the people around him were expecting these incredible things to happen from him, and they weren't surprised when he became this like powerful figure.
Now, one line of your book description is, "This is the story of the company that's inventing the future." Often when news outlets are talking about AI and the future, its applications, it's often about what could go wrong. What have you learned about how Jensen Huang deals with this?
Yeah, so Jensen doesn't like this question. In fact, I kept bringing it up to him, and at the end of the book, and I don't want to spoil too much, but he basically exploded at me at one point and just started screaming at me because I had asked him one too many times. I'll leave the full thing to see what really happened by the book, but it was an incredible moment. And when Jensen yells at you, it is like
Probably not fun.
it's not fun. It is something else. We can look forward 10 or 20 years and see kind of like whole new branches of scientific research where even most of the research work is done by a computer. Not just the researchers are using the computer, but the computer itself can do the research. Moving to fields like manual labor, already we're seeing self-driving cars beginning to replace human drivers. I think with robotics, we're going to start seeing, kind of like robot cleaning androids and robots in your house. And it will be the default expectation that you have one of these things. And so this is the upside of AI. And Jensen wants us to focus on this. He thinks these narratives of AI taking over or a super intelligent machine destroying humanity, he thinks they're overblown. And the intellectual mood, I will say, in Silicon Valley, especially over the last 6 to 12 months, has really shifted away from the doomer discourse and into Jensen's direction. As ever, he's ahead of the curve on this, I think.
That was Stephen Witt, author of Jensen Huang's biography, The Thinking Machine. You can watch the full interview on Zoom In, Zoom Out, available at TaiwanPlus.com. In baseball, Taiwan beat South Africa 9-1 in its second World Baseball Classic qualifier, meaning Taiwan still has a chance to make it to next year's tournament. The win follows a heavy defeat to Spain in Friday's opening game that threatened to knock Taiwan out of the running. The team takes on Nicaragua on Sunday as it vies for one of 2 qualifying spots from the group of 4. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. I'm Rik Glauert. Take care and we will see you next time.